Get comfy, grab a drink, because this one's for the boys, and especially for the haters who say that I'm wrong, that I make stuff up, and I have no idea what I'm talking about. Because this one is by far the biggest. I was completely right on everything that we have yet. Because in the future, there's gonna be bigger ones. Okay, in the future, I'm gonna be even more right. But so far, this one is very impressive because every single thing that I have been claiming about Obsidian, from the statistical data that we have, from my personal experience in the field and everything, got just proved completely 100% right. And we're gonna obviously go over it because it's so hilarious and so obvious. And you who know this channel, who have watched me before, how does it feel to know that you can pat yourselves on the back because you bet on the real one? So let's have the summary. A Bloomberg interview just dropped with Obsidian Entertainment. And this is the summary. Grounded 2 was a big hit. Didn't play Grounded 2, but just from the statistics that I saw, I said that yes, this looks to be really good. Avowed and Outer Worlds 2 failed to meet sales expectations. Called it, by the way. Both were in development for 6+ years. Didn't talk about that part. John Sawyer. It's not good to release 3 games in the same year. It's the result of things going wrong. No, this is completely false. This is just the fact that your games are shit. Spacing those releases helps the company manage its resources and not burn everybody out. Kinda true, but kinda irrelevant. Obsidian currently has around 280 developers. Currently no plans for a third Outer Worlds game, which I, by the way, called. But they want to keep making games in the Avowed path of... What was this called? I forgot. But it's the Avowed universe. Pillars of Eternity universe. There we go. Which is also something I called, by the way. Avowed was originally pitched as a multiplayer game, but the idea was scrapped 2 years in, a crossover between Skyrim and Destiny. We talked about this, doesn't matter. Microsoft has enacted a 30% profit target for many Xbox studios, which has led to them putting games on PlayStation. We have talked about this. Obsidian plans for the next few years is to continue working on new projects, both big and small. In addition, new content for Grounded 2 and the Outer Worlds 2. I will be surprised if the Outer Worlds 2 gets more than one expansion, because Outer Worlds 2 is a complete disaster. And here we're gonna talk about the stuff, okay? We're gonna just take a trip down memory lane. And maybe you will learn something in case you don't know. So, Grounded. Grounded 2 is obviously a ginormous success, and it is, and this shows because of one simple reason. This is Grounded 2, okay? 78% positive reviews, opened up to 50k people, and almost 7k people are still playing. That is a 13%, roughly almost 13% retention rate. Actually, more close to 11.5, I guess. But in any case, up 10% plus a retention rate after literally, after a year being out, which is pretty decent. And more importantly, here's Grounded 1, 88% positive reviews and opened up to 32k people. And this was a small side project for Obsidian. So opening up for 32k people as a small side project, technically, is massive. Obviously, this thing has netted them millions. Most likely, Grounded 2 is already on its way to close to 2 million copies. And this is very important. The reason why I'm showing you Grounded, even though I have not talked about it a lot, is because Grounded proves a fundamental truth that makes us understand that things like Ghost of Yotei are disasters, and that the Outer Worlds 2 is a disaster. And this can be applied through everything. So, Grounded 1, 32k players on release. Grounded 2, 50k players on release. 11% retention. Actually, more than 11% retention. This is 20% retention. Nice, pretty good actually. But in any case, Grounded 2 is obviously a success. The Grounded 2, most likely, considering it's been a year out, and there has been a lot of things like free weeks and whatnot, discounts and blah, 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 most likely has sold close to 1.5 million copies at this point. Maybe even 1.5 million copies, I'm not sure. But Grounded 2 definitely has sold that much. Grounded 1, hard to tell considering this game has been effectively out for 3 years, 4 years, so it's a little bit harder to guesstimate how much this is. I would say 3 million copies, but that is completely a guess, okay? When I'm guessing something because I don't have experience in it, I say that, okay? I say that because I'm not afraid to be wrong, because I'm rarely wrong. And making blind guesses like this just feels bad for someone who knows what he's talking about. So we can see that there are obvious, very easy telltale signs that Grounded 2 is successful because, well, one, it sold more copies than Grounded 2. And that is a line of success. A lot of people are, I don't know, are they saying this because they're just stupid or they're trying to lie? I'm assuming they're just stupid, honestly. That, dude, if you have a sequel to a game and the first game was successful, you are not expecting to sell less copies on the sequel. You are expecting to sell more copies on the sequel because your budget is probably also higher for the sequel. Okay? That is a fundamental truth of the world, and every game follows it. There is no such situation where someone is making a sequel for a successful game and they're like, yeah, we expect 50% less sales. No, that's not a real thing. Which matters a lot because here's the Outer Worlds 2. The Outer Worlds 2 dropped on Steam day 1 and it had a paltry, measly 18k players, which was expected. I was talking about the Outer Worlds and my expectancy for this game was if it reaches 25k-ish, I don't even remember the thing. But if it reaches 25-ish-k players, it's gonna be a massive success, and I don't believe that it's gonna even reach 20k. That it could potentially struggle even to reach 15k. Well, it actually did reach 18k. Granted, it was on a Sunday and Saturday, not on release, but hey, it still reached it. And this is a disaster because of one simple reason. 73% positive review score, and this is the Outer Worlds 1. So you will instantaneously notice that Outer Worlds 1 had 20k peak players. And typically the way that we look at how many copies a game has sold on launch is you look at the peak players, you add a 0, and then 50% plus minus sales depending on the hype. Is the hype positive? Is the hype negative? Or what's exactly happening? And the Outer Worlds 2, the hype was negative, obviously, because the Outer Worlds 2 is famously autistic for their marketing because they literally addressed not a single fucking thing in their marketing and their pre-releases and their gameplay teasers and everything about the problems with the Outer Worlds 1. And that was small maps and bad roleplay. And the Outer Worlds 2 was like, it's new game. This one gives enemies cancer. And it was dumb shit like that. Which was a massive red flag for everyone. And, well, the companion trailer with, no, you can't fuck any of them. Well, good, because looking at them, I would never want to do that in the first place. They're disgusting. In any case, needless to say, the Outer Worlds 2 was a complete disaster, and it was expected to be a complete disaster. But the fact that the Outer Worlds 1 had more players than 2, and keep in mind, this is the big thing about the Outer Worlds 1. It was not on Steam day 1. It got 20k peak players on release, on Steam, roughly 2 years, less than 2 years, I think, but roughly 2 years after its debut release on Xbox. And the Outer Worlds 2 did not win that. And obviously, I think the Outer Worlds 2, I predicted that the Outer Worlds 2 is not going to get expansion because it was just so horrid. Now, this, granted, does seem to actually kind of say that the Outer Worlds 2 is going to get an expansion, which would be surprising, but with all the currently absolute insane glazing that's going on Twitter about, oh, this game really received so much hate for no reason. Yeah, surely, no reason. Yeah, people just randomly hated it. Sure. Okay, buddy. But yeah, so needless to say, again, look at this. 359 players, and the peak is, on average, it seems like 1K-ish. Which is 4.1% retention, which is not good. The game's fucking dead. And I mean, the Outer Worlds 1 almost matches that. This is just disgusting. And needless to say, I was right about Avowed. Avowed was also a disaster because it looked like woke shit, and it was woke shit, obviously. And I was right when I predicted that Avowed most likely is going to get expansions and whatnot, because Avowed, even though it sold less than the Outer Worlds 2, you need to understand, Avowed is a completely new thing. It does not have previous fans. Technically, it does have filler of Eternity fans, but I mean, there's like roughly 5 of them, let's be real. 5 of them who cared about Avowed, at least. So this franchise is technically, while it has 1K less sales than the Outer Worlds. Oh no, actually, I'm sorry. It has 1K more sales than the Outer Worlds, and that's not a lot. Avowed at least has potential because the Outer Worlds proved that the Outer Worlds 2 proved that the Outer Worlds is a dying franchise and it's pretty much dead in the gutter. Because most likely it didn't sell even 30% of what Outer Worlds 1 totally sold. And by the way, I also want to say one thing about this. For the people who are constantly saying that, oh, you're just saying about every company that's going under. I have never said this about Obsidian. And in fact, I'll just state it again. Even though Obsidian has all these disgusting failures, everything that I have seen from Xbox's interaction with Obsidian and whatnot makes me think that Obsidian is currently not actually close to shutting down. Unlike companies like Blizzard, who are gonna very soon start struggling with finances because their Infinity cash is gonna run out that they made in the golden days of World of Warcraft and Call of Duty. Bethesda is maybe gonna fire Todd Howard, but they're not also really too close to having financial problems because of the piles of money that they got from Skyrim. But on the other hand, BioWare, with the firings that happened recently on BioWare, I mean, I think that does prove that I'm right about saying that that's gonna most likely shut down or be restructured. Ubisoft clearly is at the brink of complete collapse. But I have never said this about Obsidian because everything about Obsidian's finances and their health looks peachy. So that's just also ender for all the people who say, oh, I just say everything's gonna fail and blah, 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 blah. No. I am very picky on what I say is gonna go under, if it's gonna go under. Again, Fallout, by Bethesda's not going bankrupt, but Bethesda could see a huge change in management because I think there is still a very good chance Todd Howard gets fired. I think that possibility is the highest it has ever been in literal decades. And Blizzard obviously is also, again, I already said all of this. In any case, massive I told you so moment, once again proving that I'm fucking right, that I know what I'm talking about, and boys, it is what it is. Anyway, thanks for watching, bye.